Everybody is when I come back at you on the video. So with this video, I wanted to talk about greatness, right? Chasing greatness on your journey towards greatness, and to highlight that greatness is all about obsessing over the process. Now, of course, we all have goals, dreams, desires, right? Places we want to be, places we want to go, as far as career path, as far as hobbies, whatever the case may be, whatever industry we're pursuing, right? In order to be great, that requires obsession. That requires obsessing over the process, right? Because being great is not just about knowing information, right? If you just know information, oftentimes you come across information, you'll learn it, right? But in those cases, it'll essentially, that information will be essentially like theory, because you still have to consciously think about it because it's not fully ingrained yet. And oftentimes you need the experience, right? It's hard to be great at something if you lack experience, right? If you learn a new piece of information, oftentimes it is consciously competent. You're consciously competent with that information. That means you've learned that information, but you actively have to think about it, right? If I give you an example and I say, what's 2 plus 2, right? You won't think about it. You'll automatically say 4. Or if I were to ask you to tie your shoes, you'll do it immediately without having to think about it because you've done it hundreds, if not thousands. You've done it thousands of times in your life. In order to be great at something, you need to be unconsciously competent, which means that things happen automatically, right? You are unconsciously competent at tying your shoes because you've done it thousands of times, so it happens automatically. To be great at something, that is what you want to strive for. You want to strive for being unconsciously competent at it. You want to strive for it to be automatic, right? For the information that you learned about whatever it is that you're pursuing. Say, for example, you learned online how to play a guitar, right? If you just learned how to play a guitar, that information is still fresh in your mind. You have to actively think where to put your hand to hold the guitar, and then which fingers to string to move whichever string, right? And oftentimes it is the experience that is what pushes you to that next level. That experience is oftentimes steps that can't be skipped, right? Because your experience is what will give you it's going through the motions, right? It is what will solidify that information that you learn. Because you can learn information, and we've all experienced it, right? Even in during our time in school, right? Teacher will teach something, you'll learn it, you'll be like, oh yeah, I learned this information. And then they'll give you a problem. Say this is math class, right? They teach you a new concept. You say, oh yeah, it's easy, I know it. And then they'll give you a problem for you to apply what you learned, and then your mind goes blank, right? Like that's happened to us in all throughout school, right? And in the real world as well from time to time. So effectively what I'm saying is, if you come across new information or you knew at something, you learn something, that's great. But to truly be the best, to truly be great at something, right? To achieve greatness, it's about going through the motion. It's about falling in love with the process. It's about obsessing, because we want to achieve our goals, our dreams, our desires, right? We want to move in that direction. And oftentimes we think like, oh, once I get to that destination, I'll be happy. But what you need to understand is oftentimes it's a journey to that destination. And the journey is what you're truly after and what you truly want, because the journey towards that destination is where you should be most happy, right? Because you're working towards what it is that you want. People who are the athletes who are really great in their sport, right? They became that great because they fell in love with the process. They obsess over the process. They always want to get better. They always want to continue working on the fundamentals. They always want to, try to add new things into their game in order to take their game to the next level, right? And this is no different than anything else. If you want to achieve greatness in anything else in this lifetime, it requires not only learning, but it requires experience. It requires applying yourself. It requires going through the motion over and over and over, because as you gain experience, you'll, you know, go through the ups and downs. You'll learn what works, what doesn't work, right? Because you can learn a piece of information, right? Say, for example, you're learning how to play the guitar and they teach you, do certain things with the guitar, but there might be certain things you learn that might not work for you, that you may do things slightly differently that you find more comfortable or easier to do. That only comes with experience, right? So this is what it is. If you want to be the best at anything in this lifetime, it's going through the motion, right? I've heard the saying before that says, in order to be an extraordinary individual, right? Someone who stands out, someone who's the best at what they do or expert in the field, you just have to do the ordinary extra. You just have to continue going through the motions. And that is what will give you experience. And the experience will ultimately move you towards being consciously competent, which means actively having to think about what you're doing, to then unconsciously competent, which means you're doing things automatically, right? That's how you want to be. If you want to be a great guitar player, you want to get to the point where you can play the guitar automatically, where you can read the music and just play it without even thinking, because your fingers are like moving on its own because you've done it for so long, right? This is for all areas of life, right? If you want to be the best at anything, go through the motions, fall in love with the process, and strive to have that be part of your identity, where it's now happening automatically, right? If you're a small channel and you want to grow on YouTube, you have to gain experience doing videos, right? If you're planning to post videos, right, you have to go through the motions and experience putting out content and videos, right? And you want it to get to a point where it's an automatic process for you. Of course, at the beginning, it'll seem weird. It'll seem out of place, right? Because you're probably not used to speaking in front of a camera, or you're probably not used to, editing videos, or assuming you do everything in house, right? There's probably certain things that you're just not familiar with or may not know how to do, or have to think about how to do each and every step along the way. But then as you continue, over the weeks and the months and maybe even years, right, it'll become like second nature, right? It'll become easy and effortless, and that is how you're on either the cusp of greatness or you've achieved greatness, when things are starting to feel and flow easily and effortlessly, right? Where you're getting to that automatic state where you know what it is that you're doing and what it is that you're looking for, right? And that comes with experience, because we can all learn information, but until that information is applied, it's not necessarily really learned, right? Because if it's important information, you want it to be part of you, right? That's how you've actually learned information, right? If you're going through self-development courses and you're given advice or basically instructions on how you should be living your life and operating, and you say, oh yeah, I learned that information, but you're still operating in your old ways, you never actually learned it, because if you did, you would apply it and you would change as a person for the better, right? Nonetheless, being great at anything, you want to keep at it, and chasing greatness is fun, because like, I know some people may think about it and say, oh well, you're just doing the same thing over and over, like that's gonna get boring at some point, right? I understand, but to some degree, greatness can be enjoyable. It can be a pleasure, because you can have such a supreme confidence in yourself and your abilities when you know you're good at something, and when you know you're the best at something, and when you also know you're good at something, oftentimes there's that desire to see how far you can take it, how far you can push the envelope, right? So chasing greatness is fun. And also, when you're great at something, that's when you're seen as the expert, right? You're seen, you become harder to replace in a society, and that is what people want in this world, right? People don't like society. The majority of the people are average people, and we live in a society where we don't want average. We do not prefer average. We want exceptional, right? And if you want to get ahead in this lifetime, you need to focus on one thing or something or some things that you either are good at, or some things that you want to pursue greatness in, so that you can become the expert at something, so that you can specialize in something, so that you can be great at something. So then that is what will make you stand out, and that is what will make people want to go to you with questions, with opportunities, things like that. So I just want you to remember that to be great at anything, you need to obsess over the process. You need to believe that you are the best even before you are, even if you're in your newbie stages, your beginning stages, right? If there's something that is important to you, something that has purpose that you're chasing after, you need to believe that you're the best, right? At the very start. Even if right now you're messing up, you're making mistakes, you don't have answers, believe you are the best. Your belief would carry you forward. But also, in order to be great, you need to go through the motions. You need to go through the process. You need to continue gaining experience. Because I know it can seem a bit daunting at times, gaining experience, because a lot of times, if you don't know what you're doing, right, then no one wants to feel as though they're messing up, making mistakes, all that. But that's all part of the journey. That is how you get better. That's how you become the best version of yourself. Sometimes in order to learn what to do, you sometimes have to learn what not to do. And sometimes in order for you to learn what not to do, you have to do what you shouldn't be doing, right? You as a kid probably were told by your parents, don't touch the stove when it's on because it's hot. And some people didn't take that advice until they put their hand on the stove and burned themselves. And because they had that experience of them, burning their hand, now they know not to touch the stove when it's hot, right? It's the same with gaining experience. Sometimes there's certain things that you may not know what you shouldn't do, right? If you're new at something, you don't really have direction. And sometimes you might have to make that mistake and, hypothetically burn yourself on the stove and then say, okay, I shouldn't be doing that. But that is experience that you now have under your belt that will help push you forward. That's a mistake that you won't make again, right? So being great is just locking in, honing into your skills and your craft, because what you need to understand is, of course, most people in the world are average, and quitting is easy. Quitting is comfortable, right? Because to pursue something, to relentlessly pursue something, to want to be the best at something, that requires a level of dedication and discipline and persistence that is uncomfortable for most people, right? Because if they don't get something right away, it's easier for them to just quit to save themselves the embarrassment, right? But those who really win in life, those who get a reward for what's important to them, right? Those that can truly reap the fruits of their labor. Those are the people who never gave up. Those are the people who made the decision that they were going to be great and decided to push forward on that. So I want this video here to be for anyone who's striving for greatness in any area of their life. It can be career-wise, it can be health-wise, it can be just with hobbies, it can be even improving the relationships of people around you, right? Improving you can strive for greatness in all areas. You can strive for greatness in trying to improve, a messed up relationship with your family members. You can strive for greatness trying to be the best parent for your child. You can strive for greatness in any area. But to be great, you have to obsess over the process, right? You have to keep going through the motions. You have to keep trying new things. When you have your mind made up that you're going to succeed and you're going to win, it will be inevitable for you to win, and you'll be so hyper focused on trying to exhausting all options, right? Like you just won't give up. And that is how you need to approach everything in life. You have to make up your mind that you're going to go after something and that there's nothing that's going to stop you. And you have to accept that it may take time. It may take time from where you're at to where it is that you want to be. But that's okay, because the journey is going to be worth it. And then you'll find tremendous joy having been working towards being the best at whatever it is that you want to be, and ultimately, right, arriving at that destination of greatness. So greatness and obsession you can almost use it interchangeably, because in order to be great, you have to obsess. You have to be fixated on wanting to be the best. And the fact that you stumbled across this video and are watching this video, I know that you're destined for greatness. And I want you, whatever it is that you want to pursue, I want you to obsess over that, obsess over the process, going through the motions, because that can be such a pleasure, such a joy when you do end up becoming the best there is in the world. So that wraps up the video. Enjoy the video. Do leave a like and subscribe, as we are on the road to 100 subscribers, guys. So once again, it's Show Up, and I'm out. I'll see you guys for the next video.